Greetings, everyone.
I'm back, baby.
It's Jake C. Lee.
I'm great. Everybody else sucks.
Oh,
Oh no! It's every nightmare I've ever had!
Excuse me?
It's time to check the link.
Pretty crazy, huh? But it doesn't matter because none of this has anything to do with the show.
You know what? You just made the list!
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in football.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No.
What is up, you ducks? It is week 17, championship week of All In Football. Hopefully you're in the championships, and if not, you're just enjoying the talk we have here. Maybe week 18, when we're going to be back next week, you're playing a one-off on DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever it might be. You want to just draft with friends. We're going to cover that for you because we're also going to be here because you need us if you're insane and playing in week 18. But hopefully you're not insane in your championship this week. Although, Jeff, I did see a lot of week 7 or 16 championships. I don't know if a lot of people just didn't change it or just left it as is. But anyway, follow Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe. The most accurate show in the business is coming down to the final round. I tweeted that out earlier, Jeff. It is round 12. You and Mike have been going back to back and forth, but you held it for, like I say, what did you have, like rounds 5 through 9-ish, and then it was like 10 and then back and forth or whatever. So I feel like when we go to decision, you're going to win the number one ranking card is basically what I'm saying. He has to go for the knockout, I think.
Well, he could. He could get the knockout. The way that he's been ranking this year, he has made a lot of great calls. Last week, I didn't have Mark Andrews at number 1 among tight ends, and he did.
No.
And that was huge. He did.
Wow.
Yeah, that was huge.
You were like me. You went Kittle, right? You went Kittle, and then because no Kelsey, right?
Yeah. And that didn't pan out very well. So
no, it did. A lot. We've talked about this before. So kudos to Mike and everybody who's inside the top 10. Hell, the top 20 is admirable. Also, with a grain of salt too. That's why we do these shows. Is because there's a lot of context behind them. You know, Jeff and I talk about that a lot. Is we're kind of trying to make a statement with our rankings, and hopefully this show has helped you this year. I've seen a lot of the thanks, so I thank you for the thanks. And if you want to go to FTN, the code ALLIN still get you 20% off. theathletic.com/betstv still first free month. And we'll cover you. And we cover all those things. This is why we deep dive into it, because ranks are ranks, but this is why we go further in. And for this final week, Jeff, instead of being, well, let's play this one, I figure it's easier just to go game by game because there's like basically a scenario with every single team. Because now, in case anybody missed it, because I see people tweeting me this morning still about it, the COVID situation has changed. It is now just 5 days, even if you are unvaccinated. So Beasley and Gabriel Davis were both activated today. Kelsey's off, but Kelsey was fine anyway because he was the vaccinated situation. But it sounds like Mike Williams could be back. Basically, Carson Wentz could still play, which we're going to talk about. So we have a lot of that, Jeff, to talk about. But my first question to you, just as a sidebar, any championships this year? I got 0. I'll admittedly, I have about 7 third-place games, but 0 championships on the line.
I ran into the same thing. I had 6 semifinal games, and I only won 1 of those 6.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's nothing else I could have done in any of those leagues. For example, we had the Hall of Fantasy League. I set as good a lineup as I possibly could have set. I had one decision. It came down to the only decision I really needed to make, Devin Singletary or Antonio Gibson. I chose Singletary. I was right. I put as many points on the board as I possibly could. I would have beat the other 2 teams, of course, in the other game, because that always happens. But I ran into John Paulson, and he started Jalen Waddle, and Jalen Waddle took him over the top at the very end there. So only one. It's a Sirius XM staff league. So, there's that. There's a little bit of pride on the line. I will say this, though, about COVID, and it's something that I noticed with injured reserve as well, Jake. When people heard injured reserve, they heard, well, first and foremost, they heard 3 weeks, but it's a minimum of 3 games on injured reserve before you can be designated to return. This is now a minimum of 5 days. It's not 5 days you're back. And every single COVID case is going to be different. Some of these guys, hey, Von Miller, boom, off in 5 days. Now, he was vaccinated, and that was before all of this, but boom, back in 5 days. Allen Robinson, completely different scenario. COVID hit him very hard.
Said he lost 10 pounds.
Exactly. So we just simply don't know. Hey, if it was an ankle sprain, Low-grade ankle sprain, I could tell you. If it's a concussion, I can read practice reports, and I can figure out if a player is going to be back. Broken bone, cool. COVID, each case we have to deal with individually. So prepare for the worst and, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst in these situations.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. And honestly, it's funny you said that too, is because I'm getting texts. So I have a buddy in town from Cincinnati. His entire family got it. All of them are pretty much like, oh, I got a sore throat and my head doesn't feel that good. I got another buddy who was in Texas with his family and came back and they all got it. And he hasn't tested positive yet, but one of his brothers has it terribly. Like he's like, you can't get out of bed. So it just seems like there's still no rhyme or reason. It's very like the flu. You might get hit with a terrible flu. You might get hit with, I didn't even realize I had it like for half of a day. So yes, that's why we're going to talk about, I guess it wasn't going to be the first game. I was just going to go straight down in order, but we might as well talk about the Colts because the Colts have left the window open. They said Carson Wentz could be activated Sunday, doesn't practice all week, and he will be the quarterback. That's the answer there. There's been rumors that they already tried to reach out to Phillip Rivers. I made a joke that I've tried to reach out to plenty of dates, and this hasn't worked the same way. Like Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, they're not coming back. So I say this, Jeff, if we get to Sunday, because people are going to have to watch your tweets and rankings and my tweets and rankings, your live reminder, everybody on CBS, watch Jeff, watch his show Sunday mornings. You get this insight too. He's made a lot of calls when they get information from head coaches and everything like that. So let's say Sunday morning rolls around and Carson Wentz isn't starting. Are you benching Michael Pittman? That's the question. I think that's the only, because you're starting Jonathan Taylor no matter what, but it's the Pittman question.
Yeah, it still really comes down to the other options.
Is he top 25 wide receiver for you?
No, he won't be. He won't be. But chances are you may still have that decision. Ellinger would be pretty. It's going to be interesting. Is Ellinger Ian Book? That's the question. I guess now Ian Book gave us a Ben DiNucci-like performance, which was disastrous for anybody who rostered Alvin Kamara. Plus the fact I tweeted about this during the game. Why in the world on a third down in a big spot do you not have Alvin Kamara in the game? Was he in the doghouse for what he did earlier in the game? I have no idea. I don't have an answer to that question, but it was quite curious for sure. Either way, yeah, I think we've been in this situation before, Jake, where we overreact to a backup quarterback, but we also need to react.
I'll give you a perfect example, and you can tell me, and I know your answer because I saw where you ranked said player. So I'll tell you, I overreacted. So for everybody that hasn't read my column this week, I did my top 10. So I do sleepers every week. I do potentially start sit options every single week. And I did my 10 best calls and my 5 worst calls. And the reason that came to my mind as what to do this week is because last week in my home league, I was ready to start Amon-Ra St. Brown over DK Metcalf, over Amari Cooper, over Cordell Patterson at wide receiver. And Tim Boyle was in at quarterback. I said, nope. Dropping him down to the low 30s. He's a high-end wide receiver 4 with plenty of upside, but a hell of a lot of risk because I've seen Tim Boyle before, and this is the comparison I made at the time. Jeff has said he's essentially, it could be Mike Glenn and Jake Fromm. He destroys anybody in that offense. We've seen, as you just said, what Ian Book did, destroyed the entire offense. Drew Lock destroyed the entire offense, including the run game. So there's that kind of downside, but I went too far with it, with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that's the thing is like earlier this year, I had this one of my good calls. I had Tyler Lockett still inside the top 15 or 20 when Geno Smith was at quarterback. Because I said, we've seen Geno to know he's not awful. And Tyler Lockett was a proven vet. So I set all that up to say this, Jeff. The Amon-Ra St. Brown, you ranked him higher than I did. Kudos to you. You didn't go as crazy as I did on that one. But how do you try to parse yourself through that noise? Because there's a lot at play there. It's, as you said, it's the talent of the wide receiver. It's the offense. It's the quarterback. Could it be the worst quarterback? Could it be Nathan Peterman? Or could he just be serviceable?
And I do think there's a part of this that he is serviceable. Now, my player comp for him was not a very good one.
Who was it?
Right-handed Tim Tebow.
Oh, wow.
But there's a lot of similar, and that's from a college quarterback standpoint, that's not a bad thing. Tim Tebow obviously was a very good college quarterback, and Ellinger, not a bad college quarterback at all. But what is he better suited to do? Like, he's a bigger guy who has got some more mobility. He's not like Carson Wentz in that offense. But at the same time, when you have a situation where, well, hey, the Colts need to win to stay in the driver's seat for a playoff spot. They win, they get to 10 wins. I'd find it hard to believe you don't get in with 10 wins, regardless of what plays out
But
in week
now
18.
you go 10-7 now.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy to think about?
It is crazy. I still think I wouldn't go dramatic, but I would have him, probably just outside of the top 25. I have him at 20, assuming the slight uncertainty of Carson Wentz right now. But yeah, outside of the top 25.
I just pulled up my rankings. Why do you hate him? I have him at 19. Come on,
Yeah.
Jeff. You must hate Michael Pittman. What's wrong with you? Hey, for everybody, but if you didn't catch this is the Spider-Man meme, but with The Office when Jim and Dwight did so you see it's the Spider-Man The Office crossover. How about that for a crossover? You have to love this one. All right, let's kind of go through the rest of these games. We'll do the other side of this. Miami. I think the simple answer here is the simple answer I keep giving everybody, Jeff. Do not start a Miami Dolphins running back. That's the answer. Or are you going with Duke Johnson?
No. I've been historically very anti-Duke Johnson. I know that he's one of those love to loves for a lot of people, but I've been very anti. And I think that there's a lot of points chasing that's happening. We're going to have a lot of people chasing Rex Burkhead last week.
No, we're going to get to him.
Not a good idea. We're going to have a lot of points chasing. And I think people might still be chasing with Duke Johnson, but yeah, I can't trust any of them.
Okay, so Devontae Parker basically not even needed in that game, and that was part of it too. So I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, he just got shut down by the matchup. And to a degree, yeah, it wasn't a great matchup. But if you also looked at the offense, I mean, how many times did Tua pass? He didn't need to. Pat Mayo made the joke to me about he could have waterboyed the offense and just took a knee for the entire second half, and they probably still won that game. So Devontae Parker, do you roll him out here? And I'll give you the same game, Jeff. Let's say there is no Carson Wentz. Would you go Devontae Parker or Michael Pittman? Because I think Pittman drops down to Parker's level with no Carson Wentz.
Yeah, that's fair. Anybody out there trying to tell you that Marshawn Lattimore shadowed, by the way, he did not shadow in that game. He played his side. Because you never know. You hear people say stuff. That's a close one. Yeah, Parker for me right now, 29. Probably would have Pittman just a tick above him.
Oh,
but
you hate him too. Gosh,
I guess I do.
Wide receivers at 26. You hate.
Well,
so
I
many
hate Jalen Waddle after having to face him last week. That's for sure. Man, I said it. I'm like, I told people before the game, I was like, I have no shot because I think I was down by like 0.2. Had Kamara versus Waddle. I was like, it's over. It's done. Like I might as well just say it right now. And by like the end of the first quarter, I'm like, he's gonna have like 30 receptions in this game, like, which he was close to. So yeah.
How about everybody who went to bed on Monday night, like up by 20 or 25, facing only the Dolphins defense, and then woke up the next morning? How about that one? Yeah. I had Fabiano was texting me because the site we play on, and I don't want to poo-poo anybody's sites. We're playing on Sleeper next year, but he's like, I can't really see the box score. Where do I have to go? Because I don't even know if I'm winning anymore because he was facing Graham Barfield, and he was up by 32 or 33 going into that game, and all Graham had was the Miami defense. And he's sweating it out for the rest of the night. So let's circle back. We'll go through, like I said, a couple of these games. Atlanta at Buffalo. I asked you this question last week, Jeff, and we both said only because of the matchup. And it wasn't just only because of the matchup, only because he scored. Did Cordero Patterson even have a relevant fantasy week? The usage was the concern I asked you about last week. We are definitively in the, if you have, you might be stuck, but if you have a top 20 running back, we're benching Patterson at this point, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's outside of the top 20, still usable, still has the touchdown appeal. The big thing for him is he hasn't really had a big receiving game in about a month and a half, and that really takes the wind out of his sails.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Going back to Russell Gage, if you need him, I'm not putting too much into that game. They only passed 23 times, if I'm correct, and he still led the way.
Kyle Pitts, though, it's Kyle Pitts, and he could be the second rookie tight end in NFL history to top 1,000 yards. He's already the second to top 900 yards. To anybody out there who says he's a bust, you just simply don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, but he's been awesome.
Watched him.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's going to do it in 16 games. He's going to do it before the 17th.
Ditka did it in 14, to be fair, but which is still
That's
insane.
a whole other story.
Yeah,
it is. So Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis, as I mentioned, both activated today. They're both unvaccinated, but they're coming back because they've tested negative. That's how you come back. So I set that up to say this, Jeff. We set this up at the beginning and said we don't know. So because we're not going to really know, does Beasley feel like Allen Robinson, or does Beasley feel like Von Miller? Same thing for Gabriel Davis. I think this obviously takes Isaiah McKenzie completely out of the equation, but where do Davis and Beasley fall for you, knowing they're active, but that we're not really probably going to know how their percentage of health, that people always like to throw out numbers. They're 83.7% healthy this week.
We'll get practice reports at least, which is one of the biggest pitfalls with COVID is we don't have any report until they test out of the protocol. So we will at least have that. I think this is a different situation than something like Tyreek Hill, where he didn't practice all week long. And then they ultimately didn't even really need him as well to win that game. They were winning so handily that why force the issue? They'll have practice under their belts the entire week. Gabriel Davis is the trickiest one because Emmanuel Sanders is healthy now. So we know that all season long, what they were doing was Sanders, Diggs, and Beasley, with Gabe Davis seeing, a decent amount for a number 4 receiver, but not enough to be fantasy relevant. So if I have Davis, I am certainly going to be looking elsewhere. I think Beasley could slide up into borderline wide receiver 3 territory for me, just because the volume could be there. Now, we also have to understand the circumstances. Why was Isaiah McKenzie such a massive play? Well, he was a massive play because Bill Belichick ran man coverage where J.C. Jackson traveled everywhere with Stephon Diggs. And then Jalen Mills, who's basically the second best corner. Obviously he's not a standout, but he is their second best corner, traveled with Emmanuel Sanders. That left McKenzie with Miles Bryant. That was why they picked on that matchup. It wasn't McKenzie massive breakout, and this is a sign of things to come. So I think that has to be noted here. I don't think it's just, Josh Allen's now just going to go with Cole Beasley 15 times. Each game is going to be different.
Yeah, I have Beasley right around the range of Jacoby and Gage and Landry and those type of names.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So let's go to the Giants and Bears. And here's a question I'm going to ask. It's week 17. If you survived somehow with your championship on the line with Saquon Barkley, because, Jeff, that home league, I should have benched Saquon Barkley for Rashad Penny, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and put him in the flex, because I had 2 other running backs. I lost with freaking Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson. That effing team. Anyway, sidebar there. Saquon Barkley is not inside my top 20 running backs. Is he for you?
Well, he was 20 last week. I right now have him at 24, which is kind of crazy. I was asked last week why I keep ranking him so highly, and I was like, guys, this is the lowest I think I've ever ranked him. Right. We're not ranking him so highly anymore, but he also is still seeing an RB2 workload. And that's where I keep going back to, where it's challenging.
So I'll give you context. Somebody asked you brought that up. Somebody asked me about Amari Cooper. They're like, why do you still rank him around 25 every single week? Because we just saw what Cooper can do. Sure, more often than not, he's finishing lower than that, but it's still the upside, and that's where these gambles, and that's why we do a show like this. And I think that's a fair spot for Barkley. I'm actually a little in front of him, and I don't even love him where I have him. I kind of want to put him down by you. So I'll ask you this. Let me see if you have either of these names in front of him. DeAndre Swift, is he in front of him or behind him?
I didn't rank Swift yet. That news came out while I was on air, and I was writing an article right before this. So I'm going to...
Would you play Swift or Barkley? See, I would still go Barkley because it's Swift's first game back, despite the fact I believe the Lions are not going to risk Swift if he's not 100 or close to 100%, because there's nothing left to play for, obviously. Yeah. So why risk it? So I would still go Barkley over Swift, but...
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not that the Giants have anything to play for either, but I agree.
Pride. Yeah. The pride of Judge and Daniel Jones for another year next year. Come on. Would Michael Carter against Tampa Bay or Saquon Barkley?
I right now have Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
It's close.
Okay.
2 spots.
Wait, so who are the 2 names in front of Barkley then? This might be easier just to ask you that.
In terms, who's had 23 and 22?
23, 22. Yeah.
Well, 22 is Melvin Gordon. That's an easy one given the matchup. 23 is Deontay Foreman.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love Deontay Foreman. All right, so wait. This is good. Let's transition to that game. Oh, actually, on the Chicago side, if Justin Fields is back, any effect for you who the quarterback is on playing Mooney and Allen Robinson? Says you said it, lost 10 pounds. He's getting back to being 100%. does the quarterback situation change at all for you? Or is it just play Mooney, don't even think about Allen Robinson? Or if it's Foles again, do you actually consider Allen Robinson?
I don't consider Allen Robinson, no.
Okay.
Cole Kmet, I would if I needed if I'm in that spot where I've been streaming all season. But no,
Okay.
not Robinson.
Okay. Then let's go to that Chargers game that you mentioned, because that is actually at 1 o'clock as of right now. I don't think it's going to change because they already made changes for this week, so I don't think that one's changing. So the Eckler being back, Mike Williams being back, you're starting Eckler, you're starting Mike Williams, depending on your wide receiver situation. We could go through a million scenarios of where you might need Mike Williams and you might not. That'll be check the rankings for both of us and get some help there. So real quick on the Chargers side, Justin Jackson, I still think is in play as a flex option, Jeff, just because we've seen the use 2 weeks ago when Eckler was hurt. And at least it's not a guarantee. Let me make that clear for everybody. But at least what we've seen to date is 95% of the players come back, see about 80 to 90% of their normal workload that first game off COVID. Eckler did miss because he didn't test negative, so he clearly had it and had symptoms. So do you think that we're starting Eckler no matter what, but do you think Jackson's in play is the question?
Well, I think he's in play, but for a different reason, because Eckler's back early enough where he's going to get a full week of practice. And I do think that's a factor that we have to consider here when these guys are actually coming off. I think Jackson's in play because this team is looking like a playoff team. And if they do make the postseason, they need Austin Eckler. So why would you go out and give him 25 touches this week when Jackson obviously is fresh, obviously is running hard, obviously is more than capable out of the backfield to give you some reps here? I know that's not what you want to hear if you have Austin Eckler, but if you are a Chargers fan, it's exactly what you want to hear as you're making this look to the postseason. So I think, yes, I agree, flex worthy, and running hard has an opportunity here. I am very bullish on Austin Eckler, though, at the same time, because he doesn't need the 25 touches to be a very effective fantasy asset.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I'm checking real quickly because I want to think, was it Chris Raybon or who was it? Somebody had Justin Jackson as RB3 this past. I was like, kudos to you, dude. Hey, you had the guts to pull that one off. So let's talk about the Denver side, because you said Melvin Gordon and you said because of the matchup. But here's where I'm not with you. I am with you right now because I have Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. If Teddy is not back, I'm benching Melvin Gordon because he throws too much and he destroys that offense. For everybody out there, I made this joke with Meany on Monday. If you're looking for Melvin Gordon's box score, you have to go past the zeros because he had negative. I have been on the start Javonte Williams. You have too. Start Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon every single week. It's not a problem that they both do good. But if Locke is at quarterback, I think Melvin Gordon's off the charts, 30s.
I could see it. I don't know if I'll react that much to it. Teddy's tricky. Second concussion of the season. The nice thing is they did not move him to injured reserve, so that would have been the telltale. Yeah, it would have been the telltale. So, yeah, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. The nice thing, too, though, this week, and if you're watching right now, I know you want to set your lineup. It's Wednesday. We don't have a game tomorrow.
I tweeted that out yesterday.
You have until Sunday, and a lot is going to change. I know this goes under the radar. Jake, I'm sure your process is very similar to mine. I don't have all the answers right now. It's Wednesday. By Friday, I hope to have most of the answers and realize that I won't have all of the answers. By Sunday morning, I'm going to have as many of the answers as I possibly can and still realize that I won't have all the answers. But it's Wednesday. We still have a lot to go in terms of the course of the week, the research, the developments across the league. So your best bet right now is not to be trying to set your lineup. It's try and gather as much information as possible. And don't just stare at your lineup all week long because you're only going to think yourself into a corner that you're never going to get out of.
Right. And that's the biggest thing is, even just last week, even forget the Thursday thing. If you started people on Wednesday, half the league wasn't even the same situation. A lot of them were playing, but it wasn't the same situation once we got to Sunday. So there is a situation. There's actually breaking news, by the way. Sam Darnold's starting for the Panthers. We're going to get to that in a second. But Darrell Williams, no Clyde Edwards-Helaire at practice today. Not surprising. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, for all intents and purposes, from all reports, is out for week 17. This is, again, Made the reminder a billion times. We'll make it one more, 1,000,000,001. Make sure these high-end backups are on rosters and not on waivers because people were still chasing Darrell Williams. Don't ask me why he was sitting out there. We know Darrell Williams isn't play. We know Darrell Williams averaged 15 points per game, replacing, I don't think people realize that, 15 points per game, replacing Edwards-Helaire earlier this year in that stretch of, 4 or 5 games. The question I have about this, similar to Justin Jackson, is Derek Gore in play for you as a flex, Jeff? Hoping that this ends up being a shootout, hoping Derek Gore gets 6 to 10 touches and one of them turns into a big play or a touchdown.
Yeah, or some kind of downfield passing play. I'm like, what the heck is he doing down there?
Not looking at Tyreek Hill?
yeah, exactly. Maybe. I have him at 44 right now. I don't know. I think I might be pushing
not
it.
that low. No,
That's not flex worthy.
No, it's not. I'm trying to see. You actually love him, and I hate him apparently because I am lower than that, low 40. So there you go. I think if you're desperate, it could come into play. But another one just like that. It's the same thing with Keyshawn Vaughn. Everybody's gonna see the box scoring that big play, and yeah, a big play could always happen, but it's the per touch opportunities. And same thing. I think Keyshawn Vaughn, Derek Gore are both behind Justin Jackson, but they're both that desperation. We'll spin it this way, Jeff. The way that I would see those guys is I would rather play them over a backup who I know just is a floor option. Like a backup, I'm trying to think like a good one. I was going to say Devontae Booker, but he barely gets any touches. I need a better running back than that I would just
Mike
go ahead and
Davis?
play. Perfect. That's perfect. Do I want my 5 points for Mike Davis? No, I'll just take the home run play of Gore or Vaughn. Do I want Devonta Freeman if there's no Lamar Jackson? Because he's still, last week, even with the touchdown, similar to Cordell Patterson. I'll just go for the home run play. So those are where those names fall into play. On the Cincinnati side, do we even need to talk about the Bengals? I guess the one question is, if you remember Joe Burrow's previous 5 games, only one of them was really good. Do you have any hesitancy of rolling out Joe Burrow if he was your quarterback against the Chiefs defense, which is playing good in the second half of the season?
Wait a minute. More happened in football than just last week?
Yeah, that's interesting, huh?
I
Rex
mentioned
Burkhead is the best running back. Justin
Yes.
Jackson is the second best.
Yes.
Joe Burrow's in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you know that already.
Isaiah McKenzie, PPR monster.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned that on the radio show, how people were complaining left and right about Joe Burrow. And somehow everybody I played this week managed to start him against me, which is remarkable. And now here he is. He's the big superstar. This is a very good season for Joe Burrow. Very good season. We also have to remember, and especially as we're transitioning, because, hey, 2022 rankings are coming out for me next week. We're transitioning into 2022 mode. When you look at the season as a whole, you only see those numbers. You don't realize the ride that you go on through the course of the season. And we've seen that dramatically here with Joe Burrow. Kansas City's defense is very good. This has been a big part of, remember, by the way, sky is falling, Kansas City stinks, Patrick Mahomes, really? Is this him? They've won 8 games in a row. They went from 3-4 to 11-4. They are absolutely steamrolling. It's a tough matchup. What's that?
I said they're no Dolphins. The Dolphins' first team in NFL history to have a 7-loss streak and a 7-win streak.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Was the best of times, was the worst of times.
Exactly.
It's a tough matchup. So Burrow, if you were riding him last week, chances are you don't have a top 10 option, so you're probably still going to have to ride him. But just be aware, Kansas City is a good defense.
Where do you have Joe Burrow? I had Joe Burrow right at 10.
I'm at 11, but that's assuming Lamar plays.
Actually, I have him one spot, so let's talk about that. I have him one spot in front of Lamar, even assuming Lamar plays, because I don't think even if he plays, I see some people in the chat saying he looked terrible in practice today. Of course, it's also
These
Wednesday.
guys were at practice? That's amazing.
Yeah.
My source told me that
they take away the rushing. That's my biggest concern, is that even if he plays, I just don't know if he's going to run. And if he's not running, similar to Kyler Murray, I don't trust the arm in the passing. So it's only one spot, but it's Joe Burrow. I don't want to say okay, make your argument for Lamar Jackson over Joe Burrow, but that's are you concerned about the running? I guess is the best question, because I'm heavily concerned about Lamar Jackson. I think that's the lowest I've ever ranked Lamar Jackson as 11.
Do we know the type of ankle sprain it was?
They said mid, sounds like it, but I think everybody's guessing. All the inside injuries and the doctors on Twitter, everybody seems to just be guessing of what it looks like. I don't think the Ravens ever said what kind of ankle sprain it was.
Yeah, I don't think that's something the Ravens would say based on the way they operate. Yeah, it's tricky. I would love it if it was like a mid-grade low ankle sprain, because that would be more
You don't get to
encouraging
choose.
than even a low-grade high ankle sprain. I don't know. I still will put him there. I like what he was able to do with his arm earlier in the year, and do like the fact that the passing weapons are relatively full strength now. Mark Andrews has been an absolute monster down the stretch, and that gives you a nice advantage there. But then again,
quiet to start the season.
Then again, you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd as your receivers. That's really, really good for Joe Burrow. They're going to be good for a long time, man. It's going to be exciting to see what they do over the next half decade here.
And how nice is it to say, like, yeah, we don't always need Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a luxury right there. So I put this in the sheet on the other side of this game. Oh, real quick, Rashad Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
Is he contingent on whether or not Lamar Jackson plays? Because it seems like Tyler Huntley only likes two people, Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown, and nobody else.
Yeah.
So is this basically like Huntley plays, no Bateman, Lamar Jackson plays, then I think about Bateman? Is that how you're thinking as well?
I don't even know if Bateman's going to be high enough to think about this week.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the folks with these sorts of decisions probably, what is he on their rosters in a lot of instances? He's not a top 3 option in most instances, right? Because we're now down to 2 teams in most leagues.
I mean, if you're in a 14-team league, you might be, but yeah.
Yeah.
So on the other side of the ball, and I see the question about Tom Brady, that's the next game, because very similar to that has been Matthew Stafford, who's been struggling of late. Actually, similar to Joe Burrow. Both of them. They're kind of been like a lot of 1 touchdown games in there, but some big ones, a 300-yard game and multiple touchdowns. We've seen all 3 wide receivers, just like the Bengals, have big days. We've seen all 3 wide receivers score in the same game. They are facing you and me at secondary for the Ravens this week, Jeff. I am firing up Matthew Stafford, obviously Cooper Kupp, but I am also firing up Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham over Bateman. Hell, I think I'd probably start both of those guys over Devontae Parker at this point. Just simply, you tell me, this is your opportunity, Jeff. You haven't done it all year. I want you on a show to finally just say, Jake, you're nuts. I hate you. You're stupid. I'm playing 1,000% this matchup because we just saw what Joe Burrow did. There is nothing left in the Ravens secondary to stop Matthew Stafford and these 3 wide receivers.
Well, I don't think you're crazy. I have it ranked that way right now.
Okay.
Well.
There we go.
But I also do think that the narrative that Stafford hasn't been that good. He had like 4 straight 3 touchdown games, then a 2 touchdown and a 1. I mean, it was one down week, really. He's in a lot of ways having, I wouldn't call it necessarily a career year, because he has a 5,000-yard season under his belt, and a close to 5,000-yard season under his belt, and a 40-touchdown season under his belt. But this is the best we've seen him statistically since the early part of his career. So we're talking the better part of a decade.
His has been more flat. Like, he had the 2, so he had Tennessee and San Francisco, which were 1 touchdown mediocre games. Then he had, as you mentioned, the peak of the 3-3-3-3, and then back down Seattle, Minnesota. So that's why.
Yeah. No, I'm totally fine. Of course, I had Matthew Stafford in the flex league, and so I'm not playing in the championship.
Where do you have Where do you have Stafford in your rankings this week?
I think it's 7. Let me check.
Ooh, you hate him.
6.
You still hate him.
No, I guess I do.
I have him at 4.
Okay.
There you go. Now, where do you have Tom Brady? Because let's talk Tom Brady.
I guess I love Tom Brady because I have him at 3.
You don't love him because I love him too. We both have him at 3.
Okay.
How about that? We are well above consensus on that one. So Tom Brady, basically what we're telling everybody out there is ignore the recency bias. Who the flipping hell cares? It's Tom Brady. Because, by the way, are you benching Gronk? No, you're not benching Gronk. I am not concerned about Tom Brady. He's facing the Jets. Put it this way, Jeff. Doesn't something just feel right about being in your championship game of Tom Brady facing the Jets? Like, this is where we used to just see him go ham anyway. Like, this is Tom Brady versus the Jets. You start him, period. Done. Move on, right?
Yeah, he's got kind of that Belichick, I hate the Jets thing going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, something to note here, too, is Antonio Brown is closing in on a number of contract incentives. I believe it's 11 more receptions. He's under 100 yards away. He's 1 touchdown away. Each one of those is $350,000, roughly, the way it equates out. So this could be a $1 million game for Antonio Brown if he hits he goes 11 for 1+ and a touchdown, he will make just in this game alone $1 million. And I know that
Tom
people
Brady
might
loves
say,
to do that for people.
well, exactly. That's the point, because people might say, oh, that's a narrative. No, it's not. We know for a fact that if these players get close to incentives, not only will the quarterback, but the coaches will often try to get them to the incentives. Like the coaches don't. Bruce Arians, if he is or isn't on the field, doesn't really care about him getting paid out, right? He's not paying out of his pocket at all. So they're going to try and get this done. I have absolutely locked Antonio Brown into DFS lineups this week. I know we don't talk about that on this show, but just as a word to the wise, I think he's in store for another massive workload.
I do. I have Antonio Brown at 7 this week.
Yeah, me too.
Nice. Say this. Look. Yeah. Too much agreement. It's week 17 already. So we already talked Miami on this. You said Deonta Foreman over Saquon Barkley. So I'm guessing at this point, if you made it, Deonta Foreman staying in your lineup. The A.J. Brown, look, if you trusted him as first. The funny thing, you know what I say, Jeff, is like I had him at 19 or 20, but I kept telling everybody, like, just go ahead and play him anyway because it's Thursday because of COVID. And then there's a lot of people like, oh, I missed Antonio Brown's game. I'm like, I guess I should have put him at like 10 just to be like, hey, look, you should just start him, period. But hey, that lesson be learned. Don't wait. And you know what? Real quick on the side, would you avoid waiting on Monday Night Football, Cleveland-Pittsburgh, just in case? Because it's the only game that's not on Sunday. Like maybe we get Jarvis Landry gets hit or Deontay Johnson gets hit. I'm the same conversation. You're not benching Deontay Johnson for I don't know, Brian Edwards on the Raiders. You're not going that far, but if you have a comparable option, would you avoid waiting for Monday Night Football because it's the only game that could screw things up for us?
I don't think I would, because that means I'm really the options we're talking about. Jarvis probably isn't an option. So there's 3 options you'd be talking about, right? You'd be talking about Nick Chubb, you'd be talking about Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris, and that's it.
Really, it's just Deontay Johnson,
and they're primo guys that I would not be. Yeah, I wouldn't overthink that one. Okay.
So back to Las Vegas. Darren Waller, if he plays, do you just put him back in at tight end if he's your tight end?
Yeah, I think so. I don't, and I'm not going to hold my breath on it. We'll believe it when we see it, right?
I believe so as well. So how about this? Would you hold your breath as you did this, Jeff? Because I think you might have to. It's week 17. The Goon, Dare Ogunbowale, got almost every single touch after James Robinson went down. He is facing New England, who are susceptible to pass-catching running backs. Do you play Ogunbowale in your Week 17 flex? Obviously, you're not starting him as an RB2, but would you play him because here's the question is that just because they had nobody to turn to in that game? Is Raquel Armstead active? Do they sign somebody? Do you even care? Because what you and I talk about this a lot, Jeff, is watch what the team tells you. Yeah. And we could say they signed somebody today after the show.
Well, they did sign somebody.
Okay. Who did they sign?
Mekhi Sargent.
Oh, they picked. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was yesterday. They picked him off the practice squad from the Rams. So,
and if you sign from practice squad, they have to go to 53-man. So right. he's on.
So does that tell you any concern for Dare?
Well, I think the concern for Ogunbowale and just in general is that he never profiled as a 3-down back. He's always been viewed as a passing down back. Armstead,
he was supposed to be the new Gio.
Armstead's a lot of the same, though. You know, I wouldn't buy in on him. Whereas Sargent's a pretty big dude. It's amazing. So he's now on his 3rd team of the season, I believe, because he was on the Titans, then he was on the Rams, and now here he is with Jacksonville. I'll put it this way. I have the fantasy championship on the line. Do I really want to trust a Jags running back with the fantasy championship on the line? A Jags running back not named James Robinson, especially with the fantasy championship on the line. I can't do it.
Let's not forget, what was it, 4 attempts for 3 yards leading James Robinson a couple weeks ago, leading the Jaguars? You remember that game?
Yeah.
When Urban Meyer was still around? Yep. I want Sargent just to be like Sargent and just be, you know, the salute to that. So what about on the other side then? Damian Harris, I had him too low. But I was also thinking, hey, he's coming off an injury. It's Belichick. And he gave Brandon Bolden a decent amount of touches. I was like, Harris is clearly the lead. Harris is always the lead when he's healthy. But maybe he only gets 60% of the work because they keep him healthy. Nope. Damian Harris went bananas, in case anybody missed it in Week 16. But if Stevenson is back, is this the Broncos where you're just going to play both of them?
Yes, but only as flexes. It was the anti-Derek dilemma game because he scored the 3 touchdowns, but he still had no involvement in the passing game.
Right.
So the touchdown productivity, if you're kicking yourself for Damian Harris, I wouldn't, because I think he did pretty much what we would have expected from a touch volume and yardage standpoint. It's just nobody in their right mind would ever project 3 touchdowns. You know, I thought there was probably a 70, 80% chance he scored 1 touchdown. 3 touchdowns, I mean, that was it right there. Otherwise, yeah, I think we'll be right back to them splitting series, which is not optimal. And then it comes down to who finds the end zone, and good luck guessing that.
So what also might not be optimal. So if Jordan Howard is also out, including Miles Sanders, this is pretty easy. Fire up Boston Scott and then Kenneth Gainwell as RB4 if you're desperate, ? Maybe an RB3. But if Jordan Howard plays, we've done this dance before, Jeff. There was a lot. Meanie and I screamed to the clouds that week. There's the very first week that Boston Scott, this team has told us that they like Boston Scott. He was the guy. It was about a 55-45 split that first game. He and Jordan Howard scored 2 touchdowns each. The next game, the split was about 50-50 again, but Boston Scott didn't score. Jordan Howard scored 2 times again. So if Howard is active, Howard and Boston Scott, how are you playing this against Washington?
Howard would be the play. I don't think I could trust Boston Scott. The game where everybody scored touchdowns, that was against the Lions, right? So
yeah,
everybody scored touchdowns. But if you're in a short yardage situation, I just see them using Howard, the bigger back of the two. They've both been really effective. And I've largely not been a Jordan Howard apologist since early in his career. The first 2 years, fine. But once we saw the decline, I just always thought it was more hype than anything among fantasy players. They weren't looking at the actual performance. But this year, I'm giving credit where credit's due. He has looked really good. And maybe it's just you put a guy in the right system and then they work again. And that's exactly what's happened here. So I don't mind that play. Of course, we're not out of the woods yet because he is dealing with that stinger. So we have to see if he gets through.
So on the other side of the ball, Heineke maybe plays. Kyle Allen maybe plays. It's been very gross of recent. How far are you going before you're benching McLaurin and Antonio Gibson at this point?
Gibson, we need to see practice reports too.
Of course.
But
would you start Barkley or Gibson? Assuming
Gibson.
Okay. I mean, look, that's where we are, as insane as it sounds.
Yeah, it would be Gibson as of right now. McLaurin's down at wide receiver 30, which is kind of crazy. I got to ask Amon-Ra St. Brown or Terry McLaurin earlier today, and it was decidedly Amon-Ra St. Brown. Wow. Craziest stuff.
I have a 32. 30 also.
Yeah.
So, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown inside my top 20.
Like,
it's not even close.
Me too, especially with Goff back. I mean, we saw he was able to do it with Boyle. Now he'll be able to do it again with Goff.
There's actually while we're doing this, is Goff is dealing with a knee injury, still suffered day to day. So on top of the COVID, but we just saw him be fine with Tim Boyle. So who the hell cares at this point? You know what a lot of people care about is wanting to put Rex Burkhead in their Week 17 lineup. Jeff, I did on the Athletic show. I did the South Park episode. I made the joke about Cartman licking away the tears. I said that's what's going to happen. Everybody starts Week 17. Rex Burkhead is just going to be crying as they lose their championship. Are you with me on this?
Results are not as important as process. If you're starting Rex Burkhead, you are following results from last week and only last week. Look at the games before last week. Rex Burkhead's averaging like 2.5 yards a carry most of those games. Sure, he may touch the ball 15 times. 15 for 40. 2 catches for 8. What are we expecting against San Francisco here for him? I get it last week, but that was a fluke game, right? First and foremost, that Houston, they have a lot of fight. Shout out to them, credit where credit's due, but at the same time, they had no business really beating that team, and they beat up on them. It was a game where Los Angeles made him look like Marshall Faulk. That's not going to happen again.
So here's the big thing on the other side of it. 2 big ones. Elijah Mitchell's back, ? The point here is let's assume he's back for this purpose. Assuming Mitchell is back, is he immediately back into the top 20 of your ranks, or are you concerned of what Jeff Wilson has done? And the second part, which we're going to get to, is Trey Lance is at quarterback.
we can only base things on what coaches do, not based on what we
Right.
think, feel, or believe. And what this coach has done is he rides one running back. And we have
Yes.
seen it multiple times. When it's Mitchell, it is Mitchell. In that matchup, yes, he would have to be a top 20 option. 20 plus carries against that defense.
I have that the same way. I actually have Elijah Mitchell 17 as of
Yeah.
right now. And Jeff, at number 11, Trey Lance. I am putting Trey Lance in my lineup. I know he looks ugly as a thrower. You know who else looks ugly as a thrower? Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. We also know that Trey Lance is probably going to run 10 times, especially against this defense. Are you going down with your ship as Trey Lance as a QB1?
13, so right on the
Okay.
border right now.
Over Taysom Hill?
Well, I don't have Taysom Hill ranked right now.
Okay, would you play him over Taysom Hill?
Probably not.
Ooh, interesting.
Taysom Hill largely is, he's a QB1 basically every single time he steps foot on the field. Trey Lance could go sideways. I don't think it does, but there is at least that chance. That's why I'm not putting him in the top 12.
Okay. Arizona, Dallas, this is simple. If Connor's back, by the way, you play both running backs.
Yeah.
Try to avoid the wide receivers. Dallas, the opposite. Play both running backs, but try to play the wide receivers.
Yeah.
Maybe not Gallup. Carolina, New Orleans, I just mentioned earlier. Sam Darnold is at quarterback. Thumbs up or thumbs down for DJ Moore on that one? I
Well,
think it's
real
thumbs
quick
up.
though, I do have to address a question. Guys, team defense. Jake has his methodology. Here's my methodology. Find takeaways. Do you really think Dallas is going to turn over Kyler Murray left and right? Do you really think Arizona is going to turn over Dak Prescott left and right? I realize they've been good defenses this season. They are not usable this week. Find the takeaways. Go after the takeaways because that's where you're going to score touchdowns. That's where you're going to put the most points on the board. I'm not using either of those teams. There's a reason why they were not in my waiver wire column where I always make my recommendations each week. As far as DJ Moore, can I go like this? It's like,
You have to pick one.
oh, man. I'll use him as a wide receiver, back-end wide receiver, too. I mean, he still had over 10 targets
that's
last
still
week.
usable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So if Taysom Hill's back at quarterback, you're using Kamara. Yeah. That's his. Would you actually put it this way? If Ian Book's at quarterback, would you ever bench Kamara?
I don't think so, but I would obviously have to move him down in rankings.
Like around the Barkley range?
Maybe a
Or higher.
little higher than that. I don't know.
Okay.
That was just really frustrating because of how awful. Like the processing speed for Ian Book was so ridiculously slow. Taysom Hill, like I was hoping to get like 80% of Taysom Hill. We got like 10% of Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, it made him look a lot better than we realized. He's not great, but he's a lot better than Ian Book.
So 2 games left real quick. We talked about the Swift situation. We talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown, but on the other side, Seattle, is this a simple Penny, DK, Lockett? They're all in your lineups anyway. Like you're not benching any of those three.
And Everett.
All right. So, yes, I did put Everett in there, especially because Everett has been really good since he came back from the injury, and this is a great matchup for him. So the last one, we have Sunday Night Football, and I saved this one for last for 2 reasons. One, Sunday Night Football, but I saw the question in here. I already addressed it in the my rankings column. I have a link to weather. Yes, it's going to be single digits. That is not a concern, though, because there's no weather, there's no wind, there's no precipitation. The single digits can slightly alter the passing game. I mean, we're talking a tiebreak. Like if your choice is, I'll give you an example, KJ Osborne versus Devontae Parker. Maybe if they're close in the rankings, I say, okay, Parker doesn't have the freezing cold. You play Parker. But if it's a giant gap, you don't make the difference until those other 2 factors come into play. So I say all I have to say is like, as of right now, it's just single digits. Don't worry about it. But let's talk about KJ Osborne. Adam Thielen, surgery. KJ Osborne on the other side. Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been unpredictable and annoying. Those 3 wide receivers, Jeff, would you start any of them in week 17?
Is MVS off of COVID-19 now? I didn't see if he came off.
Well, I've kind of put him in that same conversation, assuming everybody's coming off at this point, including Mike Williams. So that's why, as of right now, just assuming everybody's coming off.
So I would have KJ Osborne ahead of those 2.
Both of them? So
yeah. The touchdown productivity is encouraging out of him, which is good. But I would expect a monster dose of Dalvin Cook in this game. Like monster 35 touch type monster dose. I'm not going to project him at that, but seriously, cold weather, big spot, spoiler spot as well for Minnesota here. I would expect them to just kind of run them into the ground.
So on the flip side of it, real quick, A.J. Dillon versus what we were talking about earlier with the running backs, Justin Jackson. Which would you go between those two?
A.J. Dillon, close, but A.J. Dillon really because of the red zone usage. It's touchdown dependent production, but he can score touchdowns if they get down there. By the way, Aaron Jones is still clearly ahead. He's a 15 to 20 touch type of guy. Green Bay doesn't give a crap about us at all. Like Matt LaFleur doesn't care about fantasy football. They want to win a Super Bowl, and they need both of these guys to be healthy. So they're going to use both of them, but Aaron Jones is still the lead back.
Yeah, I'm still with you. And Jeff and I are still the lead, most accurate. Hopefully, Jeff, you take that number one spot back. If not, at least say top three.
For the
I've been just sitting at 3. I'm just sitting in the back seat. You two are in the front seat. I take it home. Hopefully you guys take home all your titles and championships. I see all the thank yous. Also, thank you to all you guys. I said this out on earlier Twitter. I'm not trying to be cloying. I hate that actually when people do that. But seriously, we joke about it. We're doing this for a living only because you guys are watching us and listening to us for our advice to do this for a living. So seriously, thank you. And I seriously hope you're back next week just to have some fun talks, look back at the season, talk week 18, all that kind of stuff at Jeff Ratcliffe. Make sure you watch him on Sunday mornings. And we'll be back on Monday. Well, no, Tuesday next week. No Monday show next week.